the rhetorical triangle, and instead of starting with word of the day today, we're going to start with finishing up that discussion. Okay. Okay, so last time we were talking about how, well, we had a subject. We were looking at school uniforms really quickly. And we had all of these different reasons for school uniforms. They're cute, they're cost effective, they promote school spirit, pride in your school, they have academic benefits, etc., etc. And we said, okay, well, if our audience, if we start with our audience and we're like, it is Harriman High parents, then we need to make choices about, and I'm the writer, we need to make choices about what our subject is based on who our audience is, right? So we said ultimately, maybe the cost effective argument is going to be the best for this audience because that's the thing that they're going to be most concerned with, right? Whereas something like them being cute, that might be good for the audience that's like in this room, maybe, to say that school uniforms are cute. But in terms of who our audience is, that's going to exist sort of outside of the rhetorical triangle. So you think of the rhetorical triangle in two ways. You think of them acting on each other. So I obviously am influencing the subject. Like that's what being a writer is. I'm shaping the subject to be what I want it to be, right? I also, ultimately, the goal is that I want to influence my audience. So I'm acting on the audience this way. The audience, though, is influencing me, and I want to respond to what their concerns are. And because I'm responding to that, the audience are going to influence what the subject is. And ultimately, if I choose the right subject, that's going to influence my audience. So everything's kind of like working together. And the argument that you want to choose exists somewhere inside of that triangle. And the argument that a good writer will choose exists somewhere inside. That means that the only way to figure out why and how a writer is being persuasive is to know exactly who your audience is, because without a piece of that puzzle, it's really hard to figure out what would go inside this thing. All right, there's also some Latin terms that are associated with the corners of the triangle, and you are probably familiar with these. So actually, yeah, let's start with pathos then. So over here on audience, when we are appealing heavily to our audience, we are appealing to their sense of pathos or pathos. You can say it either way. Which is basically, it's a lot like an emotional appeal, but it is something way more specific than just causing emotions. Pathos is an appeal to your audience's values. So if we were at a high school in some like super upscale community where everyone has tons of money, those high schools exist, we probably wouldn't use the cost-effective argument for that audience because their values are not really in line with that argument. So when you're talking about values, it doesn't mean you have to be like, here's my sob story and here's how I'm going to create emotion in you. It's more like pathos is more like, I know what you value and what you like and what you sort of are like interested in, and so I'm going to appeal to that interest so that I can manipulate you a little bit better. All right, then you also want to appeal to a sense of logos. Logos is an appeal to logic or rationality. So logos usually looks like a kind of structure. I have a sense of cause and effect. As a human being, I see causes and I think of how they might have some kind of effect, right? And so I've got this sort of like logical sense of how the world works in my head. And when you're appealing to logos, you are appealing to someone's sense of logic. So you're like, we're going to look at this more closely today, so I won't go into more detail than that. But you're kind of saying, here are the reasons why my argument is true. And then when you're appealing, when you are really concerned with establishing the writer, you're thinking about ethos. And ethos is an appeal to the writer's credibility or trustworthiness. So ethos is how the writer establishes that they are somebody worth listening to. Like on this particular subject of school uniforms, I would have to establish that I know all the price points of different clothing items and how much school uniforms cost. And I'd have to give all these facts, all these statistics about that in order to establish that I could be an expert on this subject. And I'm not an expert on that subject, so that would be really hard to do. It would take a lot of research to establish my credibility on that. I could also, though, I could use just an elevated writing voice to establish credibility, or through speaking nicely to my audience, I could establish that I'm somebody worth listening to because I respect you. There's all sorts of ways to make yourself seem credible. That's what ethos is. Are these words familiar or unfamiliar to anyone in here? If you've never seen them before? Okay, cool. I think in 10th grade this year, we've really made sure to hit those. So let's do another argument and get a little bit more specific about it. So let's not just do uniforms. Let's talk about homework. All right, and maybe I'm making an assumption, but I'm going to have us make the argument that we do not assign homework in high school.
I agree.
This is the argument we're going to make as a class. So you have to make the argument to not assign homework in high school. So regardless of who the audience is, let's just think of all the reasons that someone might have for making that argument, not to assign homework in high school. What are some arguments that we could have to support that? Claire?
We get more sleep.
Okay, more sleep for students. Okay. Bjorn?
It should be focused on more class assignments.
Okay, so do you think that by not having homework, they would be focused more on class
Yes.
assignments? Okay. All right, cool. Claire? Okay, so what about extracurriculars? All right, cool. Kaylee?
Students will always have a teacher.
Oh. Teacher available while they're working. So if we have classroom assignments, then they can always have a teacher. Okay, I get it. Audrey, did you want?
Students have more time to be with their families.
Okay, more time for family. Awesome. Yeah.
More focus on actually the subject.
Okay, cool. Focus on understanding rather than, I'm going to call busy work repetition. Okay, Lexi?
If the students
Okay, well-balanced life. Efficient class. Alistair?
Teachers would have to spend less time grading.
Yeah. Time grading for teachers. All right, well, Sabina?
it would be less.
Sorry, my marker's running out. Less stress for the students. All right, cool. Luke?
Focus on the social life.
Focus on social life. All right, any others we want to add to this? Anything that we've missed? It's about covers it. Okay, you're making your case. No homework. That sounds great. Let's narrow down the audience. For this one, the audience is me.
Dang it.
And you've got to convince me to not have homework.
We actually trying.
I think if we take this serious, we might be able to.
Yeah.
You are the writer.
Let's do it.
I am me. Okay. Dr. Laura, you need to know things about me in order to make this appeal to Pathos, to Logos, and to Ethos. You have to know me for all three of them. All three of these work together, right? It's not just about Pathos knowing me. Yeah, you got to appeal to my values, but you also have to appeal to my sense of logic, and you got to appeal to what I'm going to find trustworthy, right? So maybe this is a little bit awkward, but what do you know about me?
You're a high school student.
I'm a what?
You were a high school student.
Yes, I was. Oh man, all my friends. I was a high school student at one time. And you guys can ask me questions too if you want to figure out how to appeal to me. Aaliyah?
I can't remember exactly what you said, but you said something that's like,
Oh, fine.
sometimes you feel like you have to balance your time between work and your family.
Yes, it's true. Workaholic. I'm trying to do that a little bit better, but yeah, I work too much, I feel like. Okay, good. Sorry, Austin. I think we got those both on the board. Now I'm paying attention to you. Sorry. Sadie?
You are really fast at writing.
I am. I'm a fast grader. Even though I write a lot on there. Transcendental 2, by the way, is graded. It was graded like this afternoon. So
Me.
did you just say, were you just making fun of me that I hadn't
No,
finished it?
wait, I just.
It should be.
Oh, now it is. Now
It's there. Okay, cool. Yeah, I finished that while I was subbing today. Okay, so yeah, I'm a pretty fast grader. Yeah, Keelan? Okay. Taught and teach. Right now I've got about 160.
But what are your favorites?
Oh,
Yes.
of course.
Best class.
Of course. Josie?
You seem like you're not stubborn, like you listen to me.
Okay, I think that's fair. I listen to reason and logic. I'm open to it. Yeah.
I don't know if this really applies, but you like,
Super
yeah,
nice.
I forgot the word. I was like,
I don't know that it applies either, but it's true. All right. Anything else you need to know about me in order to be able to do this argument effectively? You can ask me if you want to. Yeah.
Do you believe students?
No. Students don't sleep enough.
No, we don't.
I believe that's because of homework or just because of
No, I don't necessarily think it's because of homework. I just don't think it's good enough. So, always like me.
It's okay to ask your parents.
So it's like, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, what?
Be effective as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So like the reason that I assign so much homework is because I need you to get that writing practice. So I feel like when we are in class, it's not very effective when people write amongst their peers, especially like essay type things. So I want to use class time more for reviewing our writing and then individual work time for actually doing the writing. And the reason I do so many of them is because I want to get speed up, because you have to write them in 40 minutes on the AP test. So the more you write them, the more used you are to writing, kind of bust them out. So that's my stance. So I do believe in homework, and I do believe that repetition, what you might call busy work, is important in that kind of homework. And then, but I didn't assign homework when I was teaching film studies. So it's not, I don't believe in it. Yeah, I don't believe in it for all classes. I think for core classes. Yeah, Kaylee?
How did you feel about homework when you were a student?
What was that?
How did you feel about homework when you were a student?
I was like an A-B student, but I did not take advanced English.
What?
No, I took AP calculus and statistics and psychology and history.
Oh my God.
And then I tried physics and chemistry, but I dropped out of both of those halfway through. And I just took reg English classes. So that's how I felt about homework. I felt like the homework for English classes was too much as a student, so I didn't take it.
Oh.
Wow.
I know, right? So mean.
Do you value class time?
Yeah.
She goes-
I mean, does any teacher not?
I don't know. I have some teachers.
Some teachers.
Oh, yeah. No, I like, sometimes when I'm out on a Friday, I'll give you like these work days that I've been doing on Fridays, but like, I want to use up every bit of class time that I have for mostly for like this. I mean, you've noticed this, mostly for discussions and for like small group work for you to peer review stuff. Yeah, Sadie?
You like want your students to succeed?
I do.
Okay.
She goes, no.
Mostly because it looks good for me.
Yeah.
No, not really. Yeah, okay, so like I like believe in this class. Like I drank the Kool-Aid about this class. I think that if you do well in this class, like in AP language, I mean, like whether I'm teaching or whether Miss Shritleff's teaching it, like I feel like if you do well in AP English, you're gonna do well in college. It's like the best class to prepare you for what college is like.
What they all say.
Don't you write like a ton of essays?
You'll write an essay in chemistry class at college. You'll write an essay in your algebra class. Like you have to write essays in everything. It's not so delineated like it is in high school. Yeah, and then plus it also like the way that it's set up where we mostly just all talk together, that's very college. Like
I kind of agree.
you won't have as much time in college though to like work with your peers. That will all have to be outside of class.
So
All right, that's me. Those are your homework, your homework, no homework reasons. Are there any more that you want to add now that we've looked at these? And now that you've looked at your audience?
It creates a more wholesome environment.
Oh,
Without.
how does it do that?
Wow.
Students don't
There's
really
a
like
lot of research, but because of the improved mental health of the students.
Uh-huh.
Improves mental health.
The more sleep also.
Less stress.
You less stress, yes.
So improves mental health
Less
overall.
depression.
Yeah, less depression.
Less depression
Yes.
overall. Okay, yes. Oh, okay, yeah.
It would train us to like write faster if we did it in class.
Ah.
Oh.
We're already on a timer.
Yeah. All right, good. Yeah, Sadie?
You can focus on your other classes more. So like usually I do homework in other classes, then I miss like the whole lesson. So I feel like you'd like be able to focus on that class.
Well, I don't care about those other classes, but I'll still put it up here.
Well, like I'm doing my history homework right now. Like how.
Yeah, like if I
Oh,
was-
so this is for like all
if I was
teachers.
doing calculus right now. Very sad.
So on the class you're in.
I know, I was just-
Okay, hang on one more. Jane?
You should work for 8 hours, have free time for 8 hours, and sleep for 8 hours.
Yes.
It totally says that. That's
So
why.
sorry.
Okay.
That was like.
That'll be good, 'cause let's add over here. I'm on you now.
Oh, what?
What? I'm just kidding, I'm not really. I would say though that appeal to the work-life balance might work on me. You'll have to see. Okay,
Yes.
so when you are choosing then your thesis statement for this argument, you want to narrow it down. You don't want to say, okay, I think she's going to respond to sleep. She's going to respond to family, and she's going to respond to less time grading, wherever that was. If you try and choose 3 things, your paper is going to be 3 separate papers. So I know we've been talking about this now in 10th grade and 11th grade, but we are getting so far away from that 5-paragraph essay. We're not doing that thing anymore, right? So what you want to do, you guys talked about that in 10th grade, right? Like not doing the 5-paragraph essay?
No, I had to write.
Kind of.
Mine were It was like 2 to 3
Okay,
pages.
we will make sure to talk about that at a later date then. So for now though, believe me when I say that the 5-paragraph essay does not exist in published writing. That's not a format that like real writers will use, right? And the reason is because it will create this kind of list of separate arguments, and it's really hard to find the transitions between those different arguments if you have just this list. So instead, you want to find one reason that is going to appeal to my sense of logos and my values and make you seem credible to me. right? And it could be one of these, or you could also think about how you could combine them. Some of them are similar. You've got the idea of sleep and stress and mental health, and all of those kind of feel like they would go together, but you got to find the relationship between them. Like, we will have better mental health because we have less stress and we get more sleep, would be one cohesive idea, rather than here's the three separate things. Okay, so I'm going to have you, just in the normal people you work with, a couple people, write down a thesis you think will work for me for this argument.
All right. Okay.
It doesn't matter, whoever you work, just work with a partner. Why don't Elsa and Nate work together, and Claire and Lexi and Luke work together? Does that work? Okay. And then you're just with these three? Or these two and you? Okay.
Split personality.
Yeah. And then Austin, just put it in the chat box. Deal with it.
No homework, just 5 more times.
Make students succeed. I feel like that would have better. She's also a workaholic, so she appreciates her work and the work that's being done.
And our supposed focus switches to understanding.
Pretext. How do you know the pretext? They're like the training for faster. Yeah, pretext. So I just go through and every time.
Okay, so how do we
I got 69. So by decreasing. Oh, I did. I eliminated 4 words. I got 1. Students. Oh, good luck. Will be more successful. The stuff by this foundation where there's stuff in that he has more. And I made 46 so by yeah.
I was just gonna write down the battle book.
Okay, I'm gonna give you 2 more minutes for this, so just commit to a thesis.
Successful by and they will be able to better understand.
and focus on concepts in class.
And will become more time like
Prepared to be touched.
and become better time. And become
Time efficient.
more time.
Well, honestly, that's like-
I don't know. I wish they would start
Oh,
this is kind of like a rough like I like to know how the words right.
But here's the thing I bet she's gonna say. How do they become more time efficient? How does the decrease of this is what I bet she would say.
Because your theme is supposed to say everything in the essay, but it's like very clear and concise.
Okay, let's meet back together. Okay, so which direction did you go? What do you think is going to be, out of all of these things, what do you think is going to be the most compelling reason for me to get rid of homework? Elsa?
First was when students work exclusively in class, teachers can always do the
Okay. Teachers available during work and less time grading. So some combination of these two is going to appeal to me. I like that. Kaylee?
It provides some similar things. The overarching concept of students will be more successful through being able to fully understand, be prepared to be time efficient, have complete focus in class, and need an environment where they can access help.
Okay, cool. So it's almost entirely academic, what you guys are both focusing on. It's not about the stress or the mental health. It's like they're going to be more successful. Yeah, Lexi?
Ours students would be better at erasing homework because they would be forced to do it in class time, which simulates the AP environment.
Awesome. Well said. I like
Very
that. Simulates the
specific.
AP environment. That's
Yeah.
really nice. Yeah, that's definitely going to appeal to me. Any others that we want to add to this? Which one out of these lists do you think like I am definitely not going to be compelled by? Yeah. Yeah. What do I care about your social life?
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
Who cares about your families? Who cares about your extracurriculars? You don't have time for those. You're not overworked. Give me a break.
Focus on.
Just kidding. I know you're very busy. You're very, very busy.
Validated.
Also, I think you can feel it's not a super wholesome environment.
No, this is not wholesome.
Yeah, so you're noticing though, the main thing here that you're noticing is on what you know about me.
Put
It's
communist back up there.
Communist. Is I'm not like, I feel at least that I'm not the mean strict teacher, but I'm also not the like, let's talk about your feelings teacher. Like I'm somewhere in between. Not that I don't care about your feelings, I just don't think it's my job. So, so I think you nailed that, like focusing on the academics part, trying to appeal to me to say like, we're gonna do better. This is gonna be way better for us, not necessarily for our like mental health, which I do care about, by the way, but for like the pass rates at the end, like to make sure that like we actually are learning what we're supposed to be learning. I still don't believe you, just so you know, but it's still a nice argument.
It's a good one.
But we would.
And your homework for next time is to finish this near pod that's supposed to.
Wait, actually,
Yeah.
no, wait.
What if we all read a really good
Okay, wait.
essay?
What if we, instead of doing the Scarlet Letter Transcendental essay, write an essay about why we shouldn't have homework?
No, because we got, no.
Yes.
It's a good try though.
What if I write both?
All right, so let's move on. Let's move on to something a little more serious then.
This
So-
is very serious.
It is, that's true.
This is life or death.
That's true. Okay, so trying to convince our students that, wait, Sadie, what are, I just realized you're not actually in this spot. You're a TA. Oh, okay. I just like, you're always participating. It's awesome. You should just join. Oh, I was gonna say, you should just join this class. No? Okay.
See, she doesn't want to do homework. She doesn't want to. Because she knows.
Oh, that's
You would be
true.
able to educate way more people.
All right, hang on. Yeah, Claire?
This is kind of off topic, but
Yeah.
like, what's the difference like?
AP has more 4. So like, you know, you had to do those transcendental summaries that were 2 pages, 2 to 3 pages. Honors only had to do one that was 1 page. Well, you had to do one on a specific thing. So like the nature summary. No.
What about the AP lit?
But it's just like 1 page instead of the 2 to 3. So everything's kind of shorter, but we're basically talking about the same things. Yeah. And then ultimately you guys are going to write a bunch of rhetorical analyses and they're doing something different.
What about AP lit?
AP Lit is way more reading homework than writing.
So you read more than write?
You should next year.
Now, what do you test on an AP Lit?
Analysis.
It's like,
Okay, let me get your attention. Okay, so let's move on. So we are going to move from talking about transcendentalism to talking about civil rights rhetoric. So rhetoric from the time of the abolitionist movement, the anti-slavery movement, all the way up until today, that's focused on civil rights and specifically on race, and specifically on specifically on race. There's lots of different stuff in there. So you can stop bringing your transcendentalism packets to class if you want to, and I'm giving you a new packet.
oh gosh.
It's just, it was on the table.
Big
This is going that might actually be
Why is it so big? Why is she built like that?
No, I get that.
She's just dummy thick.
I think you need one more. No, maybe not.
Wait, are these going to be ours?
Yes.
Okay,
American civil rights rhetoric. Ah, Rolls-Royce.
Yep.
Matter of Black Lives. Poetry foundation. Value of agitation. Booker T. Washington.
There you go. One more.
Wait. Yes.
No,
Barack Obama's race speech. Two senators. It's so bro, my other one didn't fit this one because it's little. This one's not gonna fit at all. I like that.
I ripped out its design.
I know that one and now like
What?
Why is it so chunky?
I honestly thought they were the same.
we got it.
No, it's upside down.
Oh no, I did.
Yeah, you don't really
Okay. All right, so let's talk about what this rhetorical triangle actually looks like in practice. So, I don't know if you remember 2020, it was a pretty tumultuous year. And in the midst of it, we had a slew of racial events that caused obviously nationwide protest, right? And it was in a different way than we had seen before, in that like almost everybody got involved. The Black Lives Matter movement happened in, I want to say 2016 in Ferguson, around that maybe 2015. So it had been going for a while. Organizers had been involved with protests for a long time, but there were a few events in 2020, obviously with George Floyd's death, and then Breonna Taylor's death, Ahmaud Arbery's death, and then also, even though it is definitely not as tragic, it's still tragic, the The other event that was like really a sparking point for this was when there was that woman, Amy Cooper, in Central Park. Are you remembering this? There was a man in Central Park that was bird watching, and Amy Cooper is a white woman in Central Park that had her dog off of a leash, and the man asked her to leash her dog because it's like a natural area and dogs are supposed to be on a leash in that area, and she got really like mad and said, I'm going to call the cops and I'm going to tell them that you're Black. So it was like just a direct, like, I know the cops are not on your side. I know that this is a danger to you and I'm going to do it anyway. It's kind of like a weapon. So those events, right, all compounded right on top of each other, created this like uproar. And it wasn't just people in the streets protesting, like we talked about with civil disobedience. It was also like a real corporate event for a lot of different corporations. It was like, if you're Dove soap and you don't post something on Instagram about Black Lives Matter, like everyone knows you're racist. Or if you're not, like, I don't know, any organization. I remember there's a big beef between Lowe's and Home Depot. And Lowe's has a Black CEO who was very open about BLM, and Home Depot didn't say anything about BLM. And so it was this huge like beef between the two places, right? So it became this kind of like corporate event, and the NFL got involved. So the NFL posted this during the events, but I believe that this was like either the day before or the day after that blackout campaign that was on Instagram. Okay, so they said, the NFL family is greatly saddened by the tragic events across our country. The protesters' reactions to these incidents reflect the pain, anger, and frustration that so many of us feel. Our deepest condolences go out to the family of Mr. George Floyd and to those who have lost loved ones, including the families of Ms. Breonna Taylor in Louisville and Mr. Ahmaud Arbery, the cousin of Tracy Walker of the Detroit Lions. As current events dramatically underscore, there remains much more to do as a country and as a league. These tragedies inform the NFL's commitment and our ongoing efforts. There remains an urgent need for action. We recognize the power of our platform in communities and as part of the fabric of American society. We embrace that responsibility and are committed to continuing the important work to address these systemic issues together with our players, clubs, and partners. And then it's signed NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell. So this is the statement that the NFL releases. And I want you to take a second, and with those same people you were talking to before, I want you to figure out, who do you think the audience is for this statement? So remember when we were looking at an audience as narrow as me, it was useful because you knew that like I had certain values, right? And I had certain like commitments to things. When you're looking at an audience, even for a bigger piece of rhetoric, you want to try and figure out all of the specifics of that audience that you can. So what is a typical, well, decide whether it's meant for NFL fans. I do think it is. And what is a typical NFL fan like? So you're trying, it's a little bit of stereotyping, a little bit. You're not saying every single NFL fan shares these values, but you're trying to find the common values among them. Okay, take a second, discuss it, and then we'll discuss it together.
Oh, yeah. Like no one like it's weird. It's just
Because I feel like I got embarrassed by
and then they're like, oh, the weird thing is,
But I think I
had a friend who's fighting against Black Lives Matter. Calling Catholics, like you see, I don't know what the thing was. There's this quarterback who's just like, he's like, take a teacher in like the first day and he was about like, you know, you can't do that. And then all of a sudden, whoa, you know, like, that's so sad. It's like, just so that NFL, they're just trying to keep their fans happy and like not. Because no one, the president of the United States, we're so grateful for the stance that the National Football League made. You just didn't think you would use tickets.
Okay, we'll keep talking about this. Tell me right now, though, what do you think is the kind of commonality among the audience here? Like, first of all, do you agree that the audience is NFL fans, or is it different?
Yeah.
It's just NFL.
competition as a, like, as a league and stuff.
Oh, okay, good. Wait, everybody quiet down. Shh. Okay, so Claire was saying they also have to appeal to like competition as a league as well. I'm gonna take this off for while I'm back here. What do you mean by that?
Well, kind of like with the business, like how you said lows for some people, like if the NFL doesn't support that, then they'll lose money. And you have a lot of people who do support the movement won't like support a league that doesn't support the same values. So
Okay.
they'll lose money, they'll lose views, and then other people will.
Okay, good. So there's this balancing act that they're trying to appeal to kind of like anyone who would buy an NFL ticket. But then on the other side of that, you might also make an argument that one of the audiences for this is actually players in the NFL. And those might be completely different audiences, the fan versus the player. Yeah.
I think it's like that where I think there was a lot of just the NFL kind of just like trying. I think it's kind of like they've had kind of a spotty track record against
Yes.
Black Lives Matter. Like they used to like be really mad at quarterbacks who would kneel.
Yeah.
And then this is like kind of like a whoa, you know, we were always like this. And I definitely think it's like trying to also compete with other like huge national sports leagues. Like the NBA has always been kind of like you can say what you want. Like they've always let people wear like Black Lives Matter shirts before the games. And then I feel like the NFL is like, oh yeah, we're cool with it too, even though it's been kind of like it's been kind of spotty forward
Yeah.
how they've acted when it's come to players like protesting and stuff. So
Yeah, good. So I think that's true. I think there's a difference between kind of the NFL's attitude towards social movements in general versus like the NBA's or even like baseballs or like all these different sports leagues have these different sort of attitudes towards it. And so once they see another sports league doing something, we're like, we don't want to lose our fans to, you know, you can't buy season tickets to everything. So we don't want to lose our fans to that particular like league. So I think there is some competition here. Fans of the NFL, if you had to be, I mean, stereotyping them, do we have any big football players? And I mean, this is you like football,
yeah.
but we're not like we're kind of a little bit of a nerd class. I'm just looking around. I think sorry, but so NFL fans, like what kind of values do they maybe share, Elsa?
Oh, something I think about is like whenever my dad and brother are watching the games, they get very into it and they get super passionate. And when somebody scores a goal, I can hear them screaming from the floor down. It's just it's funny because they get into it and they're focused on that thing and they don't want to be interrupted. So I feel like they'd be upset by things that are getting in the way of the game and getting for the best game. Like if there's a player that plays better than another, it shouldn't matter what color their skin is. They should have that spot. And I feel like they want that, you know?
Yes, I think that's true. I think NFL fans are really into like that idea of a meritocracy, which is basically like the better you are, the higher up you are. And I think like that's a huge part of just sports in general, that you want to celebrate the people that are better at the sport. And so there does seem to be like this like purity of the sport type feeling with NFL fans, I think, even more than other fans. Yeah, let's see.
Another thing just is the players are people, but they're also like kind of idols, so kind of whatever they do.
Yeah, there's celebrity there.
Yeah, so with the NFL putting up something like this, it might not be a specific player, but it's something that people expect.
Okay, good. But I think the NFL could have alienated their fans. I think like the NFL fans aren't so committed to the NFL as heroes that they couldn't be driven away too, you know? So they had to make sure that they were like still meeting that competition standard. I think still appeasing their players and also kind of paying lip service or like acknowledging BLM because that's what people were doing at the time. So there's like this fine line. Yeah, Keely?
He does like fantasy football and he like also has like a team in a unit and it's the NFL it's like a unit.
Yeah.
So I feel like the idea that he's working up better
Yeah, and I totally agree, and I think that's like NFL specifically, like, if I'm wrong, let me know, but it feels like more people call NFL teams like my team, like my Jets, or like my, you know, whatever other teams, my 49ers. But I don't hear as many people doing that about like the Jazz. Like, you don't really say my Jazz, you say the Jazz, right? I don't know. I feel like you're right about football, like people taking an ownership. More people play fantasy football than any other fantasy league. Like, they're like feel a part of it too. Yeah.
I feel like NFL and football goes along with like the like kind of what you said, like the
Yes.
American dream and the American ideal. And so like it also shows like if the NFL is like this, I don't know, like on this pedestal of American life, they're showing that they want to adapt to change and like how we have as a country. Like it kind of just fits with, I don't know how to explain it, but I'm saying like it fits with how we are as a country and like trying to achieve the American dream. It's so important. It's part of it.
Yes, I agree. So they're like, we want some change, but also part of the American dream is like boosting up patriotism and saying like, this is where we can do it. It's in America. So they don't want to say too much that like, you know, this is all due to systemic racism and Black Lives Matter. And you'll notice in this, they don't ever say that. So it's more about like, look, we can all change together and we can do this like as Americans. Leah, and then to Elsa.
We talk about history and it kind of goes along with like what Claire said, that Americans have we get mad, we break things.
Yeah.
And when we're upset, we throw stuff into the ocean. Vandalize things and we harass soldiers and just because we get like upset. And
Yeah.
so that's kind of like how America was founded. And I think it goes along with what she said, like these people most like they say what's more American than baseball, but we can't play baseball.
Yeah.
Like people think football is very American.
Right.
So like leading back to that American way of life where like if something's wrong, we're not just gonna like
Right. Okay, good. So there's like this kind of like protest that's going on in the most American institution because it's part of what makes it American. Oh, I like that. Also, what were you gonna say?
well, my brother who's obsessed with being here, his entire room is like decked out walls, each different way. But it's this kind of thing like people do get committed to their team.
Yeah.
And then they get committed to the players on the team. If something bad happens to those players or they're being treated badly, I feel like the audience is going to revolt against that
Yeah.
because they care about them because they've been standing behind them so long watching what they do and what they accomplish and they want them to keep doing well. So if a Black player is getting treated badly, doesn't matter who the fan is, they're going to want to like, they're going to be upset about it.
Yeah, because it's part of their lions or whatever.
It is,
Yeah. And I think it's that sort of loyalty, that's interesting, loyalty to the players rather than the organization. So the organization better express that loyalty to their
Well, I know
people.
that like if there's a player that my dad or brother loves, they're going to start tracking him in his other team.
Yeah.
after he moves,
Yeah, right.
because they just think he's so great.
Right, right.
They're like, oh, look, he's doing that.
Because he's like theirs. He's like, you know,
Yeah.
I knew him before he was famous kind of idea. So let's look at this and see how they're appealing to that audience. Notice how often they use the word us and we. Many of us feel. It's interesting though that they separate themselves from the protesters. They say the protesters' reactions to these incidents reflect the pain, anger, and frustration that so many of us feel. So they're making sure to say, okay, those BLM protesters, the ones that are maybe acting out in ways that are illegal, we aren't necessarily them, but we do kind of, I wouldn't even say empathize, I would say sympathize. We do sympathize. We can understand where that comes from. And then they mention that they're members of the families, including someone who actually was related to someone from the Detroit Lions, right? And then look down here. There remains much more to do as a country and as a league. And I think that's kind of what Elia was talking about. It's like there's some, and also Lexi, I want to say. sorry if I'm getting the people wrong who said it, but like this way to like grow from this, right? These tragedies inform the NFL's commitment and our ongoing efforts. Tell me about the word tragedies right there to describe, you remember these deaths, or at least you remember this one. Why do you think they choose that word tragedies? Kaylee? Yeah. Yes. And I think they're saying ongoing efforts and commitment. So I don't know that it's necessarily like, and so it's done now, let's move past it. But I do think there's this idea that, oh man, these things that happened, they were extremely unfortunate. They're not naming a subject in the sentence. They're not saying this is who did the thing and this is what we should do about it. It remains like this was a terrible thing that happened. Let's leave it kind of vague like that. Yeah. Right. Right. And this is just one organization I could have pulled from. This remains true for most corporations that have got involved in the debate, was like, keep it very vague, where people that were protesting on the streets were saying things like defund the police or put this man in jail, or, making sure that someone's to blame. The corporations were not doing that. And you'll notice they're using these words like embrace and family and committed. They're flipping it so that it's a lot more positive.
Devotion.
Yeah, they're not devoted. They're just committed because they know that's where the money is, right, Bjorn? Yeah.
I think also when they use words like tragedy and stuff, like they try to appeal towards the other side of NFL fans.
Yes.
Because I think a lot of people who maybe weren't in support of the movement were mad about like the damage done or like things like that. And so I think it also like keeps them more neutral, but like still trying to support, like obviously still wanting better and to change all the racism that's occurring, but they're also not so like, oh, we need to do this, that. They're losing fans, they're just like making a bigger support.
Yes, I totally agree with you. They don't want to like alienate anybody in the debate.
I think kind of like similar to what was being said, right, with the whole like it doesn't feel like anything. Like I don't know if you noticed, but the like last section is almost like a little bit worded like, I always see videos and like, oh, this is what a really good apology looks like. And it's, it's like, oh, taking responsibility, acknowledging your actions, like making sure you're going to work to do better. And that's kind of similarly like worded.
Yeah.
In a similar way.
Yeah. So we embrace that responsibility, and they're framing that as a positive rather than the negative. They don't say, we're so sorry for being rude to Colin Kaepernick or anything like that. Instead, they say we embrace responsibility. We're committed to a continuing important work. Keep that vague. We'll try to, we'll just keep that as work. We're addressing these systemic issues, which means to accept some of that responsibility a little bit more. And then they say we're doing that together. So it's like, it's not just me, Roger Goodall. That's the players, the clubs, the partners, and this last little logo that says inspire change. It almost means like, and you as well, like this kind of group family thing. I think it's a pretty effective press release, honestly. Not that I'm like,
how long do you think it like
the most pro NFL? I know, weeks. I bet this took so many people writing this. Yes, yeah, so many PR people writing this. Okay. So one of the things that you can talk about then when you're talking about logos, ethos, pathos, which is what we were just doing as we were discussing that. I don't know if that was clear. We were talking about the logos of the argument, keeping things vague because that's sort of the logical appeal that you want. You don't want to take too much responsibility. Pathos, appealing to that audience, but still honoring who the NFL is, right? The hardest one out of all three of those to talk about is logos. So we're going to start with logos. Because we're not logicians. We haven't learned logic.
Yeah,
We don't know logic.
No, you can major in logic and you can learn all the details about logical appeals, but we got to just keep it basic because we can't make this whole class about logic. Also, I don't know enough, so. All right, so instead, I'm going to give you 6 logical claims. I want you to include these in your notes. You want a list of this. Actually, no, let's do this as word of the day. We're gonna do 6 different words of the day today.
I don't know if I have space for paper.
Do you have space?
Yes. I have exactly 6.
No, we're gonna do 6 separate boxes so that you'll be finished with that words of the day paper. Oh, yeah. Does anyone else need one of these while I'm up here? Okay. Yeah. Okay, the first logical appeal is called a definitional claim. So this is your first word of the day. Definitional claim. All right, and a definitional claim, the definition of a definitional claim is arguing what something is. And yes, that seems like how could you make an argument about what something is, but think of how vague our words are. Like, what is art? What is torture?
What is the argument?
What is racism? Like, there's our language does not always provide for precise definitions. So you're trying to decide what the definition of something is. Yeah.
So like when you're talking about what the definition is,
That was a definitional claim. Yep, absolutely. You could. So yeah, let's do that one. Devotion is, here's the example. Sacrificing, or I'm just choosing one. That's terrible. But if let's say I had to do that assignment and I defined it, devotion is sacrificing your time in order to pay attention. Okay, there we go. But yeah, words like devotion that like it's like we feel like we know what they are, but do we really? That's a definition of claim. And in the effects box, we're going to kind of show how the logic of this works. So kind of how the structure of this works if you were making this logical claim. It would be like, so the effects are, you are setting the parameters of the definition. So you're saying something like, in order for this thing to be considered devotion, here's what I think devotion is. And then you match an activity or an event or a thing, match a thing with the definition. I know it's hard to do, it's hard to talk about this, but it's like definitional claims are the hardest ones to describe. It's like, let's say I have something like art, and I'm trying to ask what is art, and I'm like, okay, is this Duchamp urinal what art? So there was an artist who would he made these, there were 6 of them. He got a urinal. He didn't actually make the urinal, he just acquired a urinal, and he wrote on it our mutt, and he just signed that on the side, and then they put it in museums. 6 of them, including some of the biggest museums in the world, like the Pompidou in Paris, like one of the biggest modern art museums in the world. Our mutt urinal. And your definitional claim then would be to say, okay, what is art?
Art is a urinal.
And then does this, so what is art? What's the definition? And then does this our mutt urinal count as art? That would be like a definitional claim. Yeah.
Okay, so like the definitional claim for like effect, it also kind of gives us a view into the writer's perspective because they're giving us what they think and like what their personal definition of an item or idea or object is.
Right, because dictionaries are just sort of culturally agreed upon. Like we've decided that this word means this thing, and every year we're adding new words to the dictionary definition. So there's always room to kind of for the writer to figure out their own definition of the thing. And yeah, it gives us insight into that. Okay, now you're going to go to the next box. And you're gonna write this word of the day, number 2. Get rid of our mut. Which is a resemblance claim. All right, and an example of a resemblance claim would be something like the Black Lives Matter movement is similar to the civil rights movement of the 1950s and 60s. So the definition here, sorry, I went a little out of order. There's our example. Our definition is where you are claiming, you're saying, what is the thing like? So you're comparing two things, that could be two events, two objects, whatever. A resemblance claim is where you're comparing and contrasting. So for example, I always hear arguments about liquor laws in Utah, and they'll say, maybe that's just who my friends are, my alcoholic friends, but they'll say liquor laws in Utah are similar to prohibition in the 1920s, and they'll make that resemblance claim, right? These are really tricky claims to make because they are very easy to take apart. It's really easy to find major differences between all these things that you're comparing and then say, okay, now your argument is invalid because of that. So it's really rare to find a resemblance claim that the whole essay is a resemblance claim, but every once in a while you will. And I have seen arguments like this, that BLM is similar to civil rights movement in the 50s and 60s. So there's the example. The effect of a resemblance claim is that you explain the details that you want to about the more commonly understood event or thing. So for example, if you live anywhere in the world, you learn about America's civil rights movement. That's like the one thing that like all countries learn about America is it's our civil rights movement. So this is a pretty commonly, it's not that we all know all the details about it, but it's kind of a commonly understood thing in that we all feel very positively about it. Good things happened during the American civil rights movement, right? There was important progress made. You will find very few people who disagree with that. So because you kind of know that, you list all those details that you think are important to understand about that civil rights movement, and then you compare to the new thing. And the point is that you are trying to transfer your feelings about this thing that you know so much about to the new thing that you don't maybe know as much about. So the whole point here is that we all feel very positively about the civil rights movement. So if you make this comparison, you're trying to say, feel that same way, feel positively about the BLM movement. Does that make sense? So when I do prohibition in liquor laws, I'm saying we all feel a certain way about prohibition. These days, very, very few people would say that prohibition was a good thing for the country. Mostly people call it a mistake. So if I say Utah liquor laws are like prohibition, I'm trying to say that Utah liquor laws are also a mistake. So you usually do it in this order. All right, am I going too fast? Are you good?
We're fine.
Okay.
We're doing
Third claim is a causal claim. This is when you are saying what caused this effect.
Yeah, that's what it looks
It's
like.
just a casual, no, that's.
That's causal. C-A-U-S-A-L. Causal, like a cause.
C-A-U. Just the person.
No.
Does that help?
I just, I like your like awesome combination of just normal writing
I
and
know.
like some cursive.
It's just completely random. All right, here's the example for this one. Oh, it's a long one. I'm just going to read it. You don't have to get it exact. Just get the sort of idea for it. So it's because people looted small businesses during the BLM protests, conservatives are more likely to dismiss the main purpose of the movement. So I'm saying because one thing happened, that is going to lead to this effect. Because people looted, that's going to lead people to dismiss the main purpose. I tried to get all over the board with politics on these, so I'm hoping I'm achieving it. So you're either talking about what caused what, so you're like, okay, we've ended up with this horrible effect or great effect. You all ended up with A's. What caused you to get those A's? So you could be working backwards, or you could be looking at this class right now and be like, wow, they're doing a great job writing down the definitions. What is the effect going to be of them learning these definitions? So it can work both ways. Okay, and the effects of this causal claim, the way that you do it, this is easy. You create a causal chain. Using then. Like, then this happened, then this happened, then that caused this because of this. Let's say using then and because. And you create that kind of causal chain. And as the writer, you're deciding where you start that chain. So do I start with, the history of man, there's always been conflict? Or do I start with this particular event? Amy Cooper met this man in Central Park and that caused these things. Yes. I don't think she served jail time, but I want to say she had a huge fine and they took away her dog.
Oh, good.
Like what they like.
I think it was a false, oh man. I'm gonna have to look it up and get back to you. I don't want to speak. Wait, Elliot, do you remember?
No, I just want like if because we just heard about it in law enforcement class, and I'm like, if she did that, I think it would be.
That's what I think it is. I think it was a false report for a crime, but they found a way to fine her like way more than normally.
I mean, it's like violates a false police report.
But she's not gonna serve that time. Yeah, Oscar. Yes, I think that was based on her. I mean, there were so many Karens in that one, like in that 2-week period. But I think it was that specifically was her. Okay. Word of the day number 4.
Let's go. Always in your head.
Oh, I'm out of markers at work. I am so sorry.
So
I'm gonna try with the black if I write hard enough. So I'm gonna-
we're like, Chris, that's what we gotta get.
Oh, it's like.
Well, no, I got him down. Yeah.
Oh, it's a terrible one, but it's a really good one.
Where did you get it from?
I think I stole it from the classroom.
Okay.
I think it was Spain.
Oh. Thank you. You can have it back again if you want. I can get more for numbers. Okay. All right. Ethical claim. An ethical claim is where you are trying to determine how right or wrong something is. So an example of an ethical claim could be, can't believe I wrote this down. No matter how angry you are, it is not right to pee on a police vehicle. All right, so you would be arguing the ethics of it, the morality of it, and the effects. The way that you actually do this is you weigh consequences. So it's really hard to write about ethics, and there are other ways to do it, but I think the way that people most commonly do it is they think about the consequences of an action, they see the positives and the negatives, and they decide whether the positives outweigh the negatives. So like for peeing on a police vehicle, like it could be like immodesty, you look like an idiot. What are some other consequences? It degrades the cause, it smells bad, whatever. There's like this list, right? And maybe there's a positive one, like it brought attention to the protest, but ultimately the negatives outweigh the positives and you would come up with that. Okay. Number 5 is an evaluation claim. This is a lot like an ethical claim, but in this you are trying to determine how great or not great. Something is, I'm just trying to make it clear that this isn't an ethical argument anymore. You're not determining whether it's morally right or morally wrong. With an evaluation, you're trying to say this thing is the best or this thing is the worst.
So if I say that chocolate's best, I'm making an evaluation.
So peeing on a cracker is an effective form of protest. Here, see, I told you, I'm trying to get all the different political ways to look at these things. But basically, here I am saying it is effective. It is like good. It is a good form of protest. Not that it's morally good, but that it's effective. So any sort of other evaluation you're trying to make that's not ethical would count as an evaluation argument.
It's like saying, like, you know, when people say the Great War, like it wasn't a good war, it was just.
Yes, exactly. That would be more of an evaluation. Yeah. Or if you just are trying to talk about a movie, and you're just like, oh man, Jurassic Park, that's the best movie. That would be an evaluative argument that you're trying to make. And the way that you do it, the effects of this, is you have to set the parameters for the category. And make a match. So it'd be like Jurassic Park is the best movie of all time. I would have to see what category I'm trying to put that in. Best movie. Okay, what type of parameters does the best movie have? I think the best movie always has Jeff Goldblum in it. The best movie is action-packed. The best movie has great characters. And then I'll make my match argument. And I will say Jurassic Park has all three of those things, so it is the best movie. And even if it doesn't fit into everything, let's say I'm like, and the best movie also needs to have an all-female cast or something, just going random. And Jurassic Park doesn't, I can still say, but that's kind of low on the list and it meets all these other criteria, so I'm still gonna say it's the best. We're gonna talk about how to write these more in a few months, but for now, I just want you to be able to find them.
Cool. Wait, how can Jeff Goldblum fit in all?
Ooh, good point. My categories aren't gonna work, are they? I never mind. All male cast, no women, and then it'll be a good movie. It's only Jeff. Yes, exactly.
No, we also got to like our cast.
All right, this is the last one. It's a proposal claim. So it's like, what should we do about this problem? So an example of this one might be the only way to achieve civil harmony is to cut funding for the police. Defund the police is a proposal argument because they're saying there was a problem, here's our solution for it. So the effects, the way that you would actually do this one, you have to set up the problem first. You have to convince your audience there's a problem. Then you give the solution. And then you will justify that solution. And that's usually the order that goes with a proposal argument. So the reason I give you all 6 of these, this basically sums up all the different kinds of logical claims that you could make just in very broad terms. And you'll be able now to talk about logic a little bit better. So when you're saying, oh, this paper has an appeal to logos, you're going to look at which one of these claim types seems to be in that paper that feels very logical, and you're going to say, this is how it appeals to logos. It sets up the problem, then gives the solution, and then justifies the solution. Like it has this sort of proposal claim structure. So you're going to be able to like name the different logical claims that are being made, and that can be really helpful when writing out logos. So let's do it. Okay, you're going to need Chromebooks for this next part. She feels long. feeling long for you guys today, or?
Yeah.
It is long.
It's fun.
Okay.
It's long, but
Okay.
It's the full moon.
Is that what it is?
Yeah, you're supposed to be feeling like way lethargic and slow.
I do.
He goes, it's like an actual thing. I did a study. I don't know if you're telling the truth.
It can't be an actual thing, but I believe it.
I was like, I feel it.
What was that?
I think that the first two periods happen fast.
I agree.
The end of the day has a title course.
First period. I'm literally stooping through this test. I'm like, oh, bad.
All right, while you're getting that Chromebook up and running, in your new civil rights packets, you're gonna find, it's the second article in here. I didn't learn my lesson about numbering the pages, so they're still not numbered.
really,
It's called abolitionist logic.
what?
Oh, it's called abolitionist rhetoric.
Okay, I was just about to say, what?
There are two abolitionists I want us to look at in here. The first is this guy named Benjamin Lay, who is amazing. This guy is amazing. So I included a little biographical info about him. So I got to read this to you. It's this guy's, you'll see, it's bonkers. Lay stood barely over 4 feet tall, referring to himself as Little Benjamin. He was a hunchback with a projecting chest, and his arms were as long as his legs. He was a strict vegetarian. He only ate fruits, vegetables, and honey, and drank only milk and water. So no grains or anything. He did not believe that humans were superior to non-human animals and created his own clothes to boycott the slave labor industry. He would not wear anything nor eat anything made from loss of animal life or provided by any degree by slave labor. And he is living in like the I don't have the year written down on this. Anyway, everything was slave labor at the time. Refusing to participate in what he described in his tracts as a degraded, hypocritical, tyrannical, and even demonic society, Lay was committed to a lifestyle of almost complete self-sustenance after his beloved wife died. Dwelling in the Pennsylvania countryside in a cave with outside entryway attached, Lay kept goats, farmed notably with fruit trees, and spun the flax he grew into clothing for himself.
This guy's crazy.
He was distinguished less for his eccentricities than for his philanthropy. He published over 200 pamphlets, most of which were impassioned polemics against various social institutions of the time, particularly slavery, capital punishment, the prison system, the moneyed Pennsylvania Quaker elite, etc. So this guy just devoted his whole life to living like this moral, like Thoreau before Thoreau, this moral resistance against the world that he grew up in, to the point where he's living in a cave and spinning his own clothes. He's so cool. So this guy, that's Benjamin Lay. And then the second excerpt is from this guy named David Walker. So just to be fair to him, let's read his description too. David Walker was the son of an enslaved man and a free Black woman. He traveled widely before settling in Boston, where he worked in and owned clothing stores and involved himself in various reform causes. In 1829, he wrote the remarkable Appeal to the Colored Citizens of the World. In it, he exposed the hypocrisies of American claims of freedom and Christianity, attacked the plan to colonize Americans in Africa, and predicted that God's justice promised violence for the slave-holding United States. This guy was awesome too. He was not afraid. I mean, you think about his situation, he was not afraid to say what he thought and to point to white people on the street and just be like, you're going to hell, just very outspoken. So both of these two awesome guys, you are going to complete the assignment called Abolitionist Logos. You might only get through 1 or 2 claim types for this, and that is okay. So if you don't finish this chart by the end of class, that's perfectly fine. Abolitionist Logos, it's under our, you only have 10 minutes. Let's just plan. Isn't he so cool?
Well, we're going to be short already.
He's so awesome.
Benjamin Lay.
All right, so he looks like this just Oh my gosh. I'm gonna tell him you said that. All right. So let's just plan on finding 1 claim type. So let's say If your group is primarily on this side of the room, from this part over, then I want you to do the Benjamin Lay essay. And if your group is primarily from Kalion over, I want you to do the David Walker essay.
And when we are we just looking for all?
So the assignment is called Abolitionist Logos under today's module. So there's a chart there, and I'm just going to have you fill this out for one claim type since you only have 10 minutes. So you're going to fill out one row there. You're going to find a claim type in their essay, whichever there's multiple. There's at least 4 claim types in each of the essays. So you're going to find one claim type, and you're going to write about it in this row. And I think I explained it pretty clear at the top. Okay, and you can do this in the same groups that you have been working in or the same partners that you have been working in. Great question. Let's just have one person submit it to the Canvas assignment. Okay. Okay, so yes, I'm sorry. So I thought I added that to the assignment. I'm coming back here and I'll add you. By the time I add you, we might be done. Yeah. That side's Benjamin Lay, yeah. What? This side is the David Walker stuff. Yeah. But if you're working together, you two are working together, right? You can choose which one you want to do. Okay, Austin.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, do I even have it? Give me a second. You might get out of doing this assignment. Not so fast. I found it. Killing me. Okay. You don't need to do it like here. There's the document. Honestly, just read the very first paragraph of which one would be easier. Read the very first paragraph of David Walker's and find one claim type in that first paragraph. You'll be able to find one, and just do as much of the row as you can in 6 minutes, and then we'll call it a day. So I know you've been here and participating. Sorry about not uploading that file.
Wait. I didn't think last name was B-E-R.